Charlie frickin' Blackmon.
Welcome back, everyone, to the HeyUSA podcast. My name is Nick Garcia, senior reporter, PlayUSA, and with me, as always, is Brant James, lead writer, PlayUSA. We got some good news on the MLB front today, but before we get into that, we got a little stuff revolving around Kentucky. Brant, can you kind of guess what happened in the Bluegrass State?
Well, it is not yet the first Saturday in May, so it's not the Kentucky Derby, so pass.
Well, what I believe is the fourth consecutive year Kentucky has failed to pass a sports betting bill. They had four bills, like a 4 gambling package bill, and only one of them, which had to deal with tax rates for pari-mutuels, was passed and signed by the governor, which means if Missouri is able to pass a sports betting bill, which is very likely, Kentucky will be surrounded on all fronts with states that have online sports betting. How about that?
That's not good. Kentucky's going to be building middle schools and bridges all around its neighbors' counties, and all those folks who like to bet on horses and are undoubtedly placing illegal bets on the Wildcats. If they're so inclined, they'll just pick a border, pick a direction, any direction you want. Yep. They can just spin a bottle and just drive that direction. Drop some money.
It is quite fascinating that, again, we spoke about this on an earlier pod, and the story that I wrote about this will be linked in the description below, but it's the furthest that this bill has ever gone. Basically, the Senate vote away from being able to be legalized, and yet it was just this, it's a very, obviously Kentucky's a conservative state, so there's this Republican stonewall that just wouldn't, let it pass. Lawmakers are hopeful that next year they can get something done, but it's going to be very tricky because next year, in 2023, their legislative session is only 30 days. So it's a much shorter session, and in odd number years, they have to pass bills by a 3/5 margin. So they could barely get a muster. I believe it was 19 of the 38 senators this year. So, I mean, it's going to be like going up against St. Peter's again in the first round for Kentucky. Yeah.
Hurtful. The hypocrisy of a conservative state such as Kentucky that just won't go the extra measure to there's already pari-mutuel wagering, not to enact a full sports betting bill. Conservative, come on. I covered 6 Kentucky derbies. Everyone is absolutely marinated in bourbon, and the not conservative things I've seen happen in the infield at Churchill Downs. Wow. Just do it. Quit the charade. The charade.
But that's the big thing on the home front for Kentucky. Let's just dive into the MLB news. You want to kick it off?
Yeah, we have been doggedly following the story of who would be the first active Major League Baseball player to sign on the dotted line and endorse a sportsbook. And they snuck one by us that we did not see coming, although he did fit some of the criteria we laid out. It is Charlie Blackmon. Today, on April 20, a deal was announced with MaximBet. Yes, MaximBet, not a huge national player. They're actually only live currently in Colorado with designs on Indiana and Iowa soon, they hope, Pennsylvania, a couple others, and they have market access deals in Ontario and a few other places. More of a regional deal. Maybe this is the way to go. Yeah. Charlie Blackmon, a 35-year-old veteran, had one great year and then 11 other years, but he's the guy. He is the first ever active player as allowed by the new collective bargaining agreement to say, take your money and go bet with these guys, and he will be a MaximBet man for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, if we had to give Charlie Blackmon odds when we first talked about this, 12,000 maybe. I don't know.
Didn't see that one coming. He did fit the criteria of having a resume and having some years behind him. As I said, way fewer home runs than I thought. Colorado guy here, career home runs 192. He plays in Colorado. His big year was 2017. Obviously, he was a National League batting champion, 331. Big year, 5th in the MVP voting. He's a big personality, not really active on Twitter, but that's another strike against him. older guy, certainly not a megastar, not a huge national recognition, but if they use him as a regional guy in Colorado, maybe it works. Maybe he's the perfect first domino. If the
Yeah.
superstars and the large national players see that fans don't start throwing live chickens and spears at the field,
Yeah.
maybe the superstars we predicted, the Bryce Harpers or the Mookie Betts or the Mike Trouts or the Otanis, maybe they determine this is okay and they sign on the dotted line.
I think it was much like you said, regional player, smart move on his part. How many more years this guy going to be in the league? He's getting up there in the echelon of older veterans that are playing, might be hopping team to team. He may retire a Rocky, but he, much like you said, he does fit the bill. He kind of has that personality and swagger of a Maxim bet type guy. Yeah. So. With that, though, we want to bring on our guest to kind of chit-chat a little bit about this new MLB deal and see what else is on the docket for today.
Yeah, we got CJ Pierre, our friend of the show from PlayUSA. Fully look forward to harassing him a little bit about this Kyler Murray nonsense. And I'm going to wait till he comes on, but there had been some gambling ambassador news out of Arizona this morning that I thought was a pretty big deal till Charlie Blackmon basically came in and dunked on it. Yeah. That was a hint of what I'm talking about. But let's everyone count to 10 and let's bring in CJ Pierre.
Now we're back with PlayAZ writer CJ Pierre. CJ, the big news out of today is that Rockies outfielder Charlie Blackmon became the first MLB sports betting ambassador. Now, being the excellent writer that you are, I want to get your thoughts on this.
It's kind of interesting, when you look at, this whole transition into what sports betting has really become, right? Years ago, it was taboo, something that we didn't talk about. You never mentioned it. You didn't bring it up with sports. None of the pro sports teams want to talk about it. Now it's just kind of all immersing all of these legends, people synonymous with their sports. And now when you look into the world of baseball, you kind of wonder, when are they going to, really, find their footing into the game. And then, with this news with Charlie Blackmon, I think it's great. I think it's great for baseball. I think baseball is definitely one of the sports that really kind of struggles to really gain that audience with the younger crowd. And I think embracing sports betting in this way and Charlie Blackmon kind of helping to lead that charge, I think it can only be good things for baseball and sports betting.
Yep. I'd written about it last week, and Nick and I were talking about it just a few minutes before you came on, that we figured there were certain criteria that would make this first guy, if not perfect, really close, because the first one is pretty important. You can't mess this up. And Blackmon fulfills some of it in that he had one really great year where he was MVP in 2017, but he's had a long career. He's a big personality, and he's just someone that people like, but he's not a superstar. Do you think that this deal, it seems to me, is important in that the first guy him going first might make the superstars, the Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper has asterisks with his religious beliefs perhaps, or Mike Trout or Ohtani, where they go, all right, nothing bad happened. Let me, where's that DraftKings thing they sent me? I mean, do you think is that open the door?
Yeah. So I think there's two ways to look at it, right? So you have, Charlie Blackmon, who's not maybe one of baseball's prominent stars, but baseball already has a problem with promoting its star players. Mike Trout's the best player in the game. I mean, most people know that, but how often do you see him? How many people would just recognize, hey, that's Mike Trout on the street? Maybe, this can help bridge the gap in between that. But then the other fine line you're walking is you have an active player involved in a way with sports betting. We all saw what happened with Calvin Ridley. I think that's kind of like the worst case scenario is what these leagues don't want one of their active players, to even have the perception that they're betting on games, especially, when baseball has the long history with the Black Sox, if we will, back in the day. So you don't ever want something like that to happen where you feel like the World Series is being rigged, or, the Super Bowl might be, one of the players might be throwing the game. You don't ever want that. So I think there's that fine line, particularly when it comes to this perception. I think baseball already kind of has, this issue with, the Pete Rose situation, and, when you have the Black Sox handled, they already have their issues with gambling. Will this enhance that or maybe, bring more criticism to that? I don't think so because, like you said, Charlie Blackmon was not necessarily a star player, but let's say it was a Mookie Betts. Let's say it was a Mike Trout. If Fernando Tatis Jr., if any of those guys got involved and then there was some kind of controversy, then I think that would raise some eyebrows. So, I think it's a double-edged sword.
Now, before we get into, if Charlie Blackmon vaults up to the power poll at the number one spot, I want to ask you, much like we said, Blackmon is he's kind of like that leadership role, the older vet that does the thing first. So the older guy or the younger guys can kind of get in the door. Who do you think, CJ, would be the first youth star power guy to kind of follow in Blackmon's shoes?
I think I'd say the one that would have the biggest impact, I think, would be Shohei Ohtani.
Okay.
If Shohei Ohtani got involved in this in any way, shape, or form, I think that would create big news. I think that would be baseball 100% completely embracing the world of sports betting because Shohei Ohtani he's definitely the most talked about player, I think.
Yeah.
If you look globally, obviously, because of his reach, I think he would probably be the one that, could potentially open the floodgates to allow, other really big stars. We don't really have a dominant star pitcher. If there was one singular star pitcher, Jay DeGrom comes to mind, but he's always hurt. So it's kind of it's kind of really hard to say. We don't really have that anymore. The Randy Johnsons, we don't have, that star pitcher that I think that would, because pitchers really would dominate the news. But in this day and age, it's, when you have Ohtani who hits and pitches, I think
Sometimes
he's the one that bridges the gap and kind of does both.
Yeah. To your point about pitchers, it's the pitcher's turn, or it was last couple of years, to be scrutinized as dirty, dirty cheaters. The hitters obviously have done their fair share of cheating too, but Jarrett Cole, Spider Tack, okay, it's betting and endorsing, and cheating over here. Just that sort of grime of why do I trust that guy? His spin rate was way down until he started cheating. But I think you're right about Ohtani in that if they could craft a really clever sort of bow nose, he does this, and he can give you advice. I think they could do something with that guy. But if this does continue regionally, maybe this will be the thing. The Diamondback? Who's the Diamondback to jump on this? Who's that star, personable, people are going to listen to kind of guy?
There's Madison Bumgarner just has this draw that people just genuinely seem to like him, even though he's not necessarily the young star superstar, like Marte is. Marte would be the one, the younger name, but he's not as recognizable even regionally. I think even though Madison Bumgarner's only been there for a short time, I think he's already gotten, some affection from people in Arizona. So I would say Bumgarner number one, Marte would be slight second just because he's the younger up and comer.
Bumgarner definitely has the name recognition, people know who he is, and so
exactly.
Good. Yeah.
Although on a billboard while you're going 1 mile per hour through downtown Phoenix, Marte Parlay. Marte Parlay.
So that obviously
somebody get my copyright guy right now.
I don't know what you're doing here on this podcast here, Brant. I think you need to be on Katina Media Marketing, PlayUSA Marketing.
Yeah. So Brant,
that's a good idea.
We also talked about this power poll. Does Charlie Blackmon vault up to the number one spot though?
No, short answer. But he is number two with a sort of a neon asterisk. Okay. There's a couple of reasons I didn't make him number one. Number one is Shaq. And Shaq is a tough one to bump off. The fact that it's a guy who's 35, his MVP year was 5 years ago. He's a good pick, but safe.
Yeah.
And currently Maxim Bet is only in Colorado. Now, someone had to go out the back of that airplane first, and there goes Charlie. We'll see if the parachute comes out or he turns into marinara sauce on the parking lot. I don't know why I had to extend that so far, but we'll see how that goes. If Maxim Bet goes to a bunch of states, or if Blackmon just unleashes this flood of people that follow, and he's a real pioneer. I don't want to make him sound too historic on this, but if he's a forerunner on this, maybe. But Shaq is just too damn powerful.
Okay.
And we'll see what happens after.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think to top Shaq, it would have to be an active player who is a legitimate number one, number two player in whatever league they're in, whether it's baseball, basketball, hockey. I think, because Shaq is such a name, well
Presence,
beyond just,
yeah.
being a basketball player. Anyone knows who Shaq is. My wife doesn't watch a single bit of sports, and she knows who Shaq is. So I think that's, I think that's kind of where you have to draw that line when you have that, Shaq, not only just his popularity, the fact that everyone loves Shaq, how visible he is, currently, we see him all the time, NBA TNT, Papa John's commercials. It's just, he's all over the place. I think Blackmon would have to he'd have to win MVP this year. To even
he's hitting 229 currently.
So I think he'd have to get to those levels to become one of the top stars in baseball to really even come close to taking that position.
Well said. Well said. But this is a good transition into our next bit of news. Jay Crowder. Haven't heard that name in a while.
That was the news of the day until he got totally overshadowed by this little bit of info.
Yeah, I mean, big news in Arizona. People in Arizona loved them some Jay Crowder. He is the life of the party at Suns games. One of my favorite memories so far since I've been covering Arizona sports is during the Phoenix Mercury playoff run to the WNBA Finals. Jay Crowder and Chris Paul brought members of the team, Devin Booker. They were all there sitting courtside, and Jay Crowder is living it up with the fans at these games, dancing on the Jumbotron. It's just all over. People in Arizona love Jay Crowder. He's got that. He brings that blue collar mentality that I think because people forget Arizona's basically full of transplants. He brings that blue collar mentality to the team that I think a lot of people in Arizona and fans appreciate.
Now, Brant, there's a little bit of gray area there for this Jay Crowder deal. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, because the stories I've been pursuing with active baseball players pursuing these sports endorsement deals, I spent way more time doing controlled fines in these CBAs than I enjoy. And the NBPA's collective bargaining agreement with the league, last signed in 2017. I think they're due. This one's up after 23-24. It just shows you how forward-thinking the NBA has always been with gambling and sports betting. In 2017, there's a lot of language in there about players have to go through anti-gambling training. I mean, that's not revolutionary. Don't bet on your sport. But it doesn't say you can accept these endorsements, but it also doesn't say that you can't. There's a whole bunch of verbiage in there about teams getting a share of gambling revenue from sponsorship, but nothing about the players. Obviously, you got to assume that the Suns and Crowder knew this was going to be cool before they did this, because the blowback would be pretty massive. And also the NBA has been very gamble forward on this. So maybe Crowder is like Blackmon, in that a whole bunch of guys are like, well, why don't I have that? I mean, that's the way this is going to work.
The interesting thing to point out here with the news is that he's a brand ambassador for Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Not necessarily, obviously we know about the partnership between Gila River and BetMGM, but he's an ambassador for the casino. And I think that just has that different optics, necessarily in terms of it being a more of a local sponsorship than it has to do necessarily with that tie into sports betting. Whether that's, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I think a lot of people are just going to try and, put together, obviously he's endorsing sports betting. But I think for maybe just the casual person, to know that he's tying himself to a very prominent local business, local casino here in the state of Arizona, I think that's a little bit more acceptable to people in most people's eyes.
To your point, it sounds like that Gila River is going to utilize him to full effect of that personality and to that connection he has with the fans. Because the one appearance that I noted from the stories in the press release, he will be hosting a pool party at the Wild Horse Pass in Chandler. So CJ, clear your schedule.
Yeah.
Sounds like it's going to be a pretty good time.
I think Crowder kind of fits that same mold as a Blackmon. He's first to do it, veteran guy, been around the league for a little bit. All the young guys are like, you do it first. We'll see if we get any backlash for it, and then we'll jump into the pool. So I think it's a good fit. And again, like you said, CJ, endorsing the casino, very different from, being the face of a sports book, but there may be some crossover. Who knows? Language has to be written, all that stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be, at the very, if not some subtle crossover at the very least.
Yeah. Well, speaking of guys who are near the end of their career, Kyler Murray.
Oh boy!
Sorry,
you have to say to really get that one's going.
Super bad couple of weeks for Oklahoma quarterbacks. It seems like their recruiting profile has been arm strength, ability to read, petulance. Got that. Anyway, the one you got to worry about, Kyler Murray, Instagram problems. What's going on out there?
All right, I think it's a combination of the generation that we live in and the world that we live in today, and this new player empowerment that is going on in not just the NFL but all sports leagues. It's no secret. I reported it from the instant that the Instagram stuff happened that this was about money. This is all about, Kyler Murray and trying to get an extension on his contract, because if he's going into his fourth year as the starter for Arizona still has the potential to pick up his fifth year option. Now, that would only put him in line to make upwards to, about $20 million. But if he signs an extension, then he can see some of this other money that other teams are paying their quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson, for example, who got a fully guaranteed deal now. I feel like that's a whole nother conversation in itself in terms of and how teams are feeling about that, because I think a lot of teams feel like Cleveland screwed them by offering Deshaun Watson that deal. And I think when Kyler Murray sees this happening, he's like, well, if Deshaun Watson is getting this kind of money, what kind of money can I get? I'm at least as good as Dak Prescott. Yeah. I think that's what Kyler Murray is thinking now. The statistics and his play may speak otherwise. But I think from Kyler's perspective, he thinks that his improvement and Arizona's improvement over the last 3 years, which, win-loss wise is there. The team's improved every year with him at quarterback. I think he thinks this is the time for me to try and cash in. I'm not trying to bet on myself over the next 2 years making, below average quarterback money when I'm arguably one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league.
The news churn when a quarterback or any NFL player particularly has a beef is maddening, because every bro fanboy blog out there will concoct 12 trade possibilities, and they just start linking back and forth to each other. And I honestly can't get through my Google feed, CJ, without reading about the top 42 trade destinations for Kyler Murray, which is pretty astounding considering there's not that many teams. But anyway, even saying that, at cjbets.az, what would be the odds you would lay on Kyler Murray not being under center for the Cardinals opening day?
Plus 1,000. I don't see it happening, mainly because we've already seen what the quarterback market has become. I think most teams are kind of settled in with their plan right now in terms of what they're doing. Obviously Cleveland has decided to go with Deshaun Watson. Now, they haven't moved Baker Mayfield, but I feel like it's going to be a matter of when, not if, Baker Mayfield is playing with a different team. You look at a team like the Carolina Panthers; they're kind of in this limbo. They have Sam Darnold. They tried Cam Newton. They were still paying for Teddy Bridgewater last year. They traded all that draft capital for Sam Darnold, and now they might draft a quarterback in the first round. They're kind of in a desperation mode, but they don't really have a lot to offer Arizona in terms of Kyler Murray. What do they offer? Their first round pick and maybe a first rounder next year. I don't. Sam Darnold. I don't know if Arizona's really trying to take Sam Darnold in a trade. You look at the market. Seattle, is that an option? They don't really have a lot of draft capital either.
Yeah.
They spent their last couple of years trading their first round picks for safeties, and it's the market just doesn't seem like there doesn't seem to be a realistic trade market for Kyler Murray when you have a player who arguably could demand at least 2 first round picks, if not 3.
I think, building on top of that too, he's already played his hand in that Kyler Murray saying, I'm going to ask for money no matter where I go.
Exactly.
Thus a team has to say, okay, well, if we're going to trade for this guy, we have to be prepared that he's going to, ask for money from us as well. So you also got to play into that. A team that has money to offer, they may have the capital, but they don't know if, so.
That's another really bad trade of Oklahoma quarterbacks. Horrible at poker.
Yeah.
Horrible at poker.
And isn't it strange that it's so odd and bizarre to me that after 3 years, a quarterback's already pushing, the number one overall pick is already pushing for a contract extension when it used to be like maybe after the 4th year when they're going into that last year of their deal is when they say, hey, I'd like to get an extension, I want like some security here. I think there's still there's clear disconnect between what Kyler is seeing of himself and what the front office sees in Kyler, right? Kyler's looking at it, well, the GM and the head coach both got extensions. Where's mine? I'm the one who's on the field. I'm the one who's doing the work. But it's clear that the organization is looking at Kyler, particularly over the last 2 years down the stretch, where Arizona's kind of just crashed and came back down to earth. Wait, where's the improvement? How much, as the season goes on, we should be getting better as a team, not we should start hot and then start getting worse. It's a really change of perspectives, because if Arizona had started bad and started to peak near the end of the season and still finish with that same record, people would maybe feel a little bit more optimistic about what's happening here. But this is not how it seems to work.
You know what would entertain me? And it's, sports is entertainment. Do you know what would entertain me?
Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray trade?
That would too. If the Cardinals take a quarterback at 23.
Oh, no.
So, CJ, so you can have something to do that week. I want that to happen.
So I don't think a lot of people realize this, but quarterback is like one of the least of Arizona's issues when it comes to their roster construction. They are missing they need some pass rushers right now. they need some
uniforms.
Yeah. They need some reliable.
We're really revealing ourselves.
They need some reliable receiving help. Outside of DeAndre Hopkins, and particularly if he suffers another injury, they need some depth at cornerback. They have a lot of needs outside of quarterback. So if Arizona was to, I would project that Arizona is going to draft one of these pass rushers in the first round. And this is a pretty deep pass rushing draft. It's deep at 2 positions, particularly. That's wide receiver and pass rushing defensive end and linebackers. But I would think Arizona would go that route. I think at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening is Kyler's going to hold out for a while. I think there will be an agreement of some kind established. Now, whether that's Arizona doesn't pick up his 5th-year option and they opt to franchise tag him next season, which would get him the median of quarterback money, which could, I believe, next year could put him in line for possibly $30 million under the franchise tag. as opposed to I think it's just south of 20 million he would get on the 5th year option. That's a possibility. But then there's a fan base in the front office. Are we really going to tie $30 million plus to Kyler Murray, even for just 1 year or for a long term? I don't know.
You either go the Pat Mahomes route or you go the Kirk Cousins route.
Well, talking about the draft, why not take an opportunity for a shameless plug? CJ will get the opportunity to think for the Cardinals because in a couple of days we're going to have our PlayUSA mock draft, and CJ will be representing Desert Swarm or whatever the hashtag is out there now. I don't know. And maybe he will draft a quarterback. Reverberations to YouTube.
We in our draft room here, we are hard at work studying. We've been watching countless amounts of film on these players. We believe it's a very deep draft. We believe that no matter what happens, we're going to get our guy.
Good news. That's good.
Excellent. I just wish there was more of that kind of content on YouTube and ESPN so you could study easier. I just wish they would.
Now, to be fair, I love college football. I've been studying a lot of these players and a lot of this draft class. I think there's some definite sleeper picks in the later rounds, and I think the teams that are obviously the best teams are picking later. I think they're going to get a lot of the best value picks in this upcoming draft. I believe there's going to be a lot of reaches in the first round, in the early part of the first round, particularly a quarterback. And in the later rounds, that's where you're going to get, the players who are going to go to great systems and have great opportunities.
Yep. Drafting high is just the first chance to make a horrible mistake.
As the Jaguars seem to routinely find out.
I believe that's a good stopping place. CJ, thanks for coming on. Everyone, be sure and like, follow, subscribe. Head over to PlayAZ, read some of CJ's stuff. Check out any of the stories in the link description below. And we will see you next week with the first ever Katana Media NFL Draft.